stood in my dining room, arranging fake pine garland across a table set with red napkins and gold-rimmed plates, my split lip throbbing every time I smiled for the camera. My husband kept pointing at me. "Say Merry Christmas, Dana," he said, grinning, and I did. My voice steady, even though the metallic taste of blood still lingered behind my teeth. Outside, the Georgia heat pressed against the windows at 94 degrees. Inside, I'd hung stockings over a fake fireplace and dressed our 6 guests, places with candy canes I'd bought that morning at a party store 2 towns over, so no one local would ask questions. 3 hours earlier, my husband Marcus had asked me, calmly, almost gently, why I'd told his boss's wife that we couldn't make it to their actual Christmas party back in December. I told him the truth, that I'd been in the hospital that week with what the doctors called a fall. He didn't like being reminded of that. His fist caught my mouth before I even saw it coming. "We're doing Christmas in July," he announced afterward, wiping his knuckles on a dish towel like he'd just finished chopping vegetables. "Tonight, for his boss, you're going to smile. And you're going to tell everyone you slipped on ice at your sister's lake house? Say it wrong, and we'll be doing this again tomorrow." So I smiled. I basted a turkey in July heat with the oven cranked to 375 and the AC fighting a losing battle, my lips swelling tighter with every hour. When the doorbell rang at 7, I opened it wearing lipstick to shades darker than usual to hide the cut, and greeted Marcus's boss, Richard Hale, and his wife Colleen like we were the happiest couple in Savannah. "Dana, honey, what happened to your mouth?" Colleen asked, tilting her head with real concern. "Slipped on ice," I said, exactly the way I'd rehearsed it. "Clumsy me." Marcus's hand found the small of my back, squeezing just hard enough that only I would feel it. A reminder. I kept smiling. I kept pouring wine. I kept playing the wife who had everything. What none of them knew, what Marcus himself didn't know yet, was that my sister, Renee, had already been on the phone with a lawyer for 2 weeks. And in exactly 9 days, everything Marcus had built his entire life around was going to collapse in front of every single person sitting at that table. Dinner went smoothly enough that I almost believed I could survive the night. Richard talked about his golf handicap. Colleen complimented my creative idea for a summer Christmas, laughing that she'd never have thought of it. Marcus laughed along, refilling everyone's glasses, playing the perfect host, his hand never straying far from my shoulder. The back of my neck, small touches that looked affectionate to everyone else and felt like a hand around my throat to me. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. I'd left it face up, a mistake I hadn't made in months. Marcus glanced at it as he passed, and I watched his jaw tighten. "Renee," the screen read, followed by a text preview. * Dana, the papers are ready. Just say the word and I'll *. He picked it up before I could reach it, thumb hovering over the screen. And for one terrible second, the whole table kept talking, oblivious, while my husband read something I was never supposed to let him see. "Excuse us," he said pleasantly, setting the phone face down and smiling at Richard. "Dana, can I see you in the kitchen? I think the potatoes need checking." There were no potatoes left to check. I knew it, but I stood, smoothing my dress, and followed him through the swinging door into the kitchen, where the noise of the dinner party dropped away behind us. He didn't yell. That was the part that scared me most. Marcus never yelled when it mattered. He just closed the distance between us, took my chin in his hand, and turned my face up to his, gentle as a man about to kiss his wife. "Papers," he said quietly. "You've been talking to a lawyer?" Behind my back, while sitting in my house, eating food I paid for, wearing a ring I put on your finger. His thumb pressed into the bruise already forming on my jaw from 3 hours ago. "Is that what tonight is, Dana? A performance before you run?" "Marcus, please, they're just at dinner." "Then you're going to walk back in there," he said, "and you're going to tell your sister, right in front of everyone, that you don't need a lawyer, that you're happy, that you slipped on ice." His grip tightened, Or I promise you, by the time this dinner ends, everyone at that table is going to know exactly what kind of wife humiliates her husband in front of his boss. Behind him, through the small window over the sink, headlights swept across our driveway, a car I didn't recognize, pulling up slow, stopping right behind Richard's. Marcus hadn't seen it yet. The doorbell rang before Marcus could say another word, and for a moment his whole face changed, confusion first, then a flicker of suspicion as he glanced toward the front hall. "Are you expecting someone?" he asked, and I shook my head because I genuinely wasn't. Renee had never once come to this house. She knew better than that. "I'll get it," Richard called cheerfully from the dining room, already halfway to the door before either of us could stop him. I heard it open. I heard a woman's voice, calm and clipped, asking for Marcus Hale by name. Not Dana, Marcus. And something about the tone made my stomach drop even before. I stepped out of the kitchen and saw her standing on my porch in a gray blazer, a leather folder tucked under one arm, badge clipped to her belt. "Detective Amara Voss," she said, holding up identification for the whole dinner party to see. "I'm looking for Marcus Hale." The table went silent behind me. Colleen's wineglass paused halfway to her lips, the same way I imagined mine must have looked 3 hours ago, when Marcus first raised his hand. "I'm Marcus," stepping forward with that easy, practiced charm, the same charm that had fooled me for 6 years. "Is there a problem, detective?" "There's been a report filed," she said, "regarding a domestic incident at this address. Multiple reports, actually, going back 14 months. I have a few questions I need to ask your wife, privately, if that's all right." I felt every eye in that dining room shift to me, to my darkened lip. The makeup I'd layered over the bruise on my jaw, the sleeves I'd pulled down over my wrists. Colleen's hand rose slowly to her mouth. Richard's easy golf course smile had vanished completely. "There's clearly been a mistake," Marcus said, his voice still smooth, but I caught the tightening at the corner of his eye. The same look he got right before his hand moved. "My wife had an accident. She slipped on ice." Detective Voss didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed on me. "Mrs. Hale, is that what happened to your face tonight? Or 3 hours ago, before your guests arrived?" The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning straining against the summer heat, the faint clink of Colleen setting her glass down with shaking hands. Marcus's fingers found my elbow, gentle to anyone watching, a warning only I could feel, pressing into the exact spot where a bruise from last month still hadn't fully healed. I opened my mouth to say the words I'd rehearsed 100 times tonight. I slipped on ice, but what came out instead was something I hadn't planned to say at all. "No," I said. "That's not what happened." The words felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone braver than the woman who had spent 6 years apologizing for bruises she never caused. Marcus's fingers dug harder into my elbow, but I kept my eyes on Detective Voss instead of him, because I understood, suddenly, that this was the only moment I might ever get. "My husband hit me this afternoon," I said, louder now, my voice cracking but not stopping, "around 4 o'clock, before any of you arrived. That's why I told everyone I slipped on ice. He told me to say that. He's been hitting me for over a year." Colleen made a small, horrified sound. Richard stood frozen at the head of the table, his fork still in his hand, looking at Marcus like he'd never seen him before. "Dana," Marcus's voice had gone soft, almost pleading, the voice he used when charm wasn't working and he needed something else. "Honey, you're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Step away from her, Mr. Hale," Detective Voss said, and something in her tone made him actually obey, his hand slipping off my elbow like it had been burned. "I have your neighbor's 911 call from this afternoon at 4:12 p.m., reporting sounds of a domestic disturbance at this address. I have 2 prior reports from an anonymous caller over the last year, and I have a sworn statement filed 2 days ago by a Renee Whitfield, your wife's sister, requesting a welfare check." Renee? I hadn't known about the neighbor's call, Hadn't known there'd been others before tonight. Hadn't known how many people had been quietly watching, quietly documenting. While I told myself no one could see what was happening behind our front door, Marcus's charm cracked open completely. This is insane. She's lying. Ask anyone here. We're happy. We throw dinner parties. In July, Detective Voss said flatly, glancing at the fake stockings hung over our fireplace. The melted candy canes on the table, dressed as Christmas. That's not a detail I'd forget to mention in my report. Richard finally set his fork down. Marcus, he said quietly, is this true? Marcus didn't answer. He looked at me instead, and for the first time in 6 years, I watched real fear move across his face. Not fear of losing me, I understood then, but fear of losing everything I'd watched him build his identity around. The boss who respected him, the reputation, the mask. Mr. Hale, I'm going to need you to come with me, Detective Voss said, reaching for the cuffs at her belt, and Mrs. Hale. I'd like you to step outside with me as well, if you're willing. I looked at Marcus one last time as she said it, and that's when I saw him reach, fast, for something on the counter behind him that none of us, not even the detective, had noticed yet. It was the carving knife, the one I'd used to slice the turkey I'd basted for a lie of a holiday, still resting on the counter where I'd left it. Marcus's hand closed around the handle, and for one suspended second, the whole room seemed to stop breathing. Marcus, don't, his voice shaking, stepping back and pulling Colleen with him. Detective Voss moved faster than I thought possible, closing the distance and locking. Marcus's wrist before the blade cleared the counter, twisting until the knife clattered onto the tile. Don't, she said, calm as if she'd done this 100 times, forcing his arm behind his back. Don't give me a reason, Mr. Hale. You've already given me enough. He didn't fight her after that. Something in him seemed to fold, the charm and the rage both draining out at once, leaving behind a man who looked smaller than I'd ever imagined him being while he stood over me all those nights, fist raised. She cuffed him against my own dining table, beside the gold-rimmed plates and the candy canes, while Richard guided a trembling Colleen out onto the porch, and the July heat rolled through the open door. You'll regret this, Marcus said to me, quiet enough that only I could hear. But Detective Voss heard it too, and I watched her write it down. That's a threat, in front of a witness. Immediately following an arrest, she said, thank you for that, Mr. Hale. Makes my report easier. They took him out through the front door, past the fake stockings, past the Christmas lights I'd strung in 90-degree heat to sell a lie I never believed in. I stood on my own porch and watched the patrol car pull away, red and blue light sweeping silently across a lawn still green from summer. And I didn't cry the way I thought I would. I just breathed. Renee arrived 20 minutes later, breaking every speed limit between her house and mine, and didn't say a word, just wrapped both arms around me on the porch steps and held on while I finally let myself shake. 3 months later, Marcus took a plea deal rather than face trial. The neighbor's recording and Detective Voss's report leaving him no room to spin another story. I sold the house. I took down every string of lights, packed away the candy canes, and moved into a small apartment, 2 towns over, with windows that let in real winter when winter actually came. This December, I hosted Christmas, again small, quiet, just Renee and me, real snow outside instead of a lie, no bruises to hide, no script to follow, just my sister across the table, and a piece I'd almost forgotten was allowed to be mine.